The absence of defending champion Russell Bobbin left the door wide open for the opening round of the Parks Unlimited OMA. The Motion Pro Moonshiner Cross Country held in Memphis, Missouri. It was Paul Whibley, a former champion of the series, grabbing the early lead in this one ahead of the likes of Nick Farringer, Jason Thomas, Jimmy Jarrett, Stu Baylor, Adam Benur, and Jeremy Smith. It wasn't long, though, before Thomas, after having problems in that first turn, was able to find himself to the front of the pack where Paul Whibley latched on, as did the rest of the crew for the early part of the race. Nick Farringer held on to a tight-knit top 3 position for a good portion of the race, but it wasn't until near the end of the race, when he ran out of gas, that he took himself out of competition. That left the duo of Thomas and Whibley to battle one another down to the wire as far as the opening round of the 2014 season was concerned, and one of the big, wide-open field sections where Whibley had saw himself make a couple of passes on Thomas, but Thomas able to retaliate, was able to make it stick this time, carried the momentum all the way through the final turns and to the checkers, where he opened up the 2014 season with the win, followed up closely by the number 111 of Jason Thomas, and newcomer to the OMA, Stu Baylor, rounded out the top 3.
Round 2 of the Parks Unlimited OMA Nationals from Greensburg, Kentucky for the Bluegrass Cross Country, where amateur racing gets the day rolling on Sunday at Russell Creek Compound, and property owner Ezra Hickerson actually lined up to give it a go in the Open B class. And even though Hickerson was not present at round 1, he was surprisingly the one to beat on his Suzuki here at round 2. The nice thing about this one for Ezra was the fact that being from right there near the farm in the Greensburg area, he got to sleep in his own bed. It was also an extra boost of confidence for Hickerson to have a number of the local residents there cheering him on, but not real sure that he actually needed that extra boost of confidence. But regardless, it made it a lot more fun taking the round 2 win there in his own backyard. A great morning of racing often leads to a great afternoon of racing, and the anticipations were high as the pros rolled down to the start, and quite possibly more questions than answers after the opening round, as the Pro 1 and Pro 2 classes lining up for the 8-mile course, including a natural terrain motocross track, tight woods, open woods, creek beds, steep uphills and downhills, you name it. Russell Creek Off-Road Compound has it all, and these guys are all prepared for it. Welcoming NFAB and Pro Yamaha rider Jordan Ashburn, making his debut here at the Bluegrass Cross Country. Jason Thomas also back with us again this week, as we know he is making a bid for the OMA title here in 2014, as is a former champion in the number 44 of Jimmy Jarrett. Green flag waving on this one, and looks like Farringer and Yamaha, NFAB and Pro Yamaha rider. That one's the 7 of Jordan Ashburn, and he's going to get credit for the hole shot there. And he's also going to get the early lead as the number 2 of the Air Group Husqvarna ride, and Nick Farringer opening up in the number 2 spot. And out of the cloud of dust, looks like the number 5 of Paul Whibley having his struggles off the start this time. He's going to open up in about a 5th place position to kick this one off. Down on the start line now for the start of Pro Row 2, we see 147 Lucas Statham, 268 Spencer Berkey, also Callum May with us aboard the 918 out of New Zealand, and the 412 of Mark Horesco out of Indianola, PA, who actually took a win in round 1 of the Pro 2 class here at the OMAs. As the kick starts down on this one, riders rolling into the first turn with a full head of steam once more. Who's going to grab the lead in this one? Looks like Yamaha rider Alec Bill, his 2nd hole shot of the season, as he grabbed the Pro 2 hole shot also in round 1. Halfway through lap number 1 now, Nick Farringer has taken over the number 1 spot on the number 2 Air Group Husqvarna. The number 7 Jordan Ashburn running back in the number 2 spot in his NFAB and Pro Yamaha. 3rd place is the Dirtwise Climb ride of Jason Thomas. And the number 4 position, the 44 of Jimmy Jarrett, trying to play catch-up, seeing a little more splash coming out of his machine now. picking up the action now. A little further down the trail here, we see Farringer still leading, still just past the midway part of lap number 1. Wibbs has moved into the number 2 spot as Ashburn drops off the 3rd. Thomas now 4th. Jarrett in 5th. Seeing a lot of mix-ups going on there, but one thing's for certain, Paul Whibley tried to make up for some lost ground there from the early on, it looks like. And you know that's got to be tough with all that dust in those open field sections. He's making up time in the woods where it's a little moister and not nearly as much dust. Checking in with the Pro 2 class now, where the leader, Shane Klimek, has opened up a huge lead over the rest of the field as he makes his way through this big open dusty field section. That might be one of the things that's helped keeping him out front as well. Battle shaping up back in the number 2 spot, though. Looks like Spencer Burke and Mark Horesco battling for second, nearly nose to tail, and a big cloud of dust following them. And coming out of that cloud of dust now, the 4th place ride of Lucas Statham. Statham making his 2014 Parts Unlimited OMA debut, and now out near the end of lap number 1, Nick Farringer still out in front of Paul Whibley. Whibley coming up through the pack with such a vengeance and such a pace right now that Farringer having to pick it up, and they are starting to separate now from the rest of the pack just a little bit. Jason Thomas back in that number 3 position and holding on to a solid 4th place position. His 2014 debut today, Jordan Ashburn, who grabbed that hole shot, made a couple of mistakes, but don't count him out before the end of this one because we're only nearing the end of this first lap, and anybody that follows off-road racing knows there's an awful lot of unknown variables and an awful lot of time left for crazy things to happen. One thing that's not crazy but is happening right now is the fact that former champion Paul Whibley is trying to track down Nick Farringer as we wrap up lap number 1 here at the Bluegrass Cross Country in beautiful Greensburg, Kentucky. Whibley's not going to let that early lead slip away from him too quickly as he's laying chase to the number 2 machine. Meanwhile, the number 111 of Jason Thomas about to check in the number 3 spot. In pretty good position as far as position on the racetrack, but he is starting to see a little bit of gap open up between himself and the 2nd place ride, which is right on the rear wheels of the 1st place ride. So he's seeing a possible win possibly slip away at his fingertips while Jordan Ashburn lays chase to him from back in the number 4 position aboard that number 7 machine. Jimmy Jarrett checks in the number 5 spot to round out the top 5 at the end of lap number 1. And near the midway point of lap number 2, still a relentless battle between your leader Farringer and the number 2 spot of the 5 of Whibley as they motor their way past some lap traffic and still trying to keep in tow the number 3 spot. Now the number 7 of Jordan Ashburn, who's gotten around the number 111 of Jason Thomas. And we'll be back with more to see how this battle shapes up right after this.
The Can-Am Renegade 1000 XXC with the most powerful engine in the industry. The Outlander 1000 XT with a redesigned chassis for unequal trail riding. The Commander 1000 Limited, the most equipped, luxurious side-by-side in the industry. The facts say it's the most advanced lineup out there. But the ride says it all.
Sometimes you come across something so different, you just have to stop and check it out. The Rocky Mountain ATV MC website has everything you need, from our huge selection of apparel and gear to dirt bike accessories and OEM parts. Our extensive inventory means most orders arrive in 3 days or less. Get low prices, quick shipping, and incredible customer service. RockyMountainATVMC.com. Get ready.
Any engine. Any season. At home. At the track. Or on the trail. AMSOIL, the first in synthetics.
OMA Racing brought to you in part on RacerTV.com by Parts Unlimited, Moose Racing, and by Springfield Armory, USA. Welcome back to the Bluegrass Cross Country in Greensburg, Kentucky, where Nick Farringer continues to lead Paul Whibley here on lap number 2 in a heated battle for the number 1 position. last round, Whibley was able to take the win, but problems for Nick Farringer.
So yeah, last week at the round 1 OMA, I ran out of gas running with the pack through the first half of the race. That was a little frustrating. So we spent the last couple of weeks since the first round testing to try and get a little better fuel mileage and carry my speed more throughout the whole day. So hopefully I can be there start to finish, not worry about fuel consumption, and land on the podium or take the win.
Well, he started off in right fashion today, to say the least, and he could really use that bit of confidence, especially after the problems there at round number 1. Back in the number 3 spot now as we check in with Jordan Ashburn. He's overtaken the 111 of Jason Thomas. He did that a little bit ago, but he continues to open up the lead now. That's some exciting part of the news for Infab and Pro Yamaha fans there, but Jason Thomas fans have got to be biting their nails right now as they're starting to see the 44 of the former champ Jimmy Jarrett close up the gap a little bit now on the 111 of Thomas, and this could really heat up quite a bit more before this is all said and done. Checking back a little further now with our Pro 2 class, leader Shane Klimek. He's going to take a quick pit, and looks like, trouble now as Mark Oresco has made the pass, and Klimek now drops to the number 2 spot, so we've got a change in the lead in the Pro 2 class, and now Klimek is going to have to try to fight back, and this is a tough spot for him to be in, especially with the confidence that the 412 of Mark Oresco has. He's been riding with the Dirtwise riding team, of course, with Jason Thomas and the former GNCC champ of Shane Watts, so that's got to give that rider a whole host of confidence, and Klimek has got a hole to dig himself out of now here about the midway point of this bluegrass cross country. Paul Whibley is starting to take control of the situation up front on his Infab and Pro Yamaha. And that Air Group Husqvarna ride not too far behind the number 2 of Nick Farringer back there in the number 2 position, as these riders are starting to stretch out quite a bit over the 3rd place position of the number 7 of Jordan Ashburn. Back out into the wood sections, Paul Whibley head down and charging. This looks like the Axeman of old last season. You remember him talking about being out a few rounds because of that injury. Had that groin injury, had that surgery, sat out for a while, and man, he is back up the strength, back up the speed, and Paul Whibley opening up an even larger lead as we near the completion of yet another lap of racing. Fortunately for Nick Farringer, he does have a little bit more time left in this race, but it's running out quickly, and Paul Whibley's got a head full of steam right now, and he's going to be tough to track down. As you can see, that gap has opened up monumentally now between 1st and 2nd. You almost got to think that Farringer's going to be thinking, all right, let's settle in for the 2nd place position after what happened in round number 1, running out of gas. I've got to score some championship points, and that's kind of what he alluded to there in his interview there just a little bit ago. In some of the tighter section now, Paul Whibley starting to run into some lap traffic. That could play into the favor of Farringer now, could slow Paul Whibley down a little bit. What that does also for Farringer is signal to these lap markers that the leaders are coming, so they'll be more apt to get out of the way when Farringer comes by and maybe hold Whibley up a little bit, so that might tighten things up, and that could be the big break that the number 2 machine is looking for here in round number 2 of this Bluegrass OMA cross country. Now, as we near the completion of another lap, Paul Whibley, though, is able to maintain a rather comfortable lead. And Whibley will go by the pits here this time around. And as we look a little further back to the 2nd place position, you got to wonder, what is Farringer going to do? Well, it looks like Farringer is going to elect to pit. Doesn't want that deja vu, that repeat of round number 1. Valuable championship points on the line right now. He is looking at a 2nd place position, and that's better than nothing, as what we saw him take there in that 1st round. So gets the cap back on that, back out into it, a fresh drink of water, looks behind him, and what is going on behind him back there in that number 3 position? We saw Ashburn battling with Thomas there for a good long time. A gap was starting to open up, and as we do see the number 3 ride, the 7 of Jordan Ashburn, now coming into sight, getting his pit board through the pits. It looks like he is opening up that much more of a lead now over the 111 of Jason Thomas. Thomas having his struggles, it looks like. Whibley down through that Long Creek section now. You can see a lot of riders have made their way through as the water a little bit more churned up out there, but still a very passable section of the race course. Farringer still back in second, and now to the Pro 2 class where Mark Horesco takes a quick pit stop. Looks like he's going to get a fresh pair of goggles as well, top off that tank of fuel. Doesn't seem to be in too much of a hurry as he seems to have a little bit of comfort there in that number 1 spot of the Pro 2 class. But as he takes off and heads to the finish line, looking over his shoulder into that wood section, looks like we might now be seeing that number 2 spot of Klimek come back into sight. So even though there's a gap, it looks like Klimek now has that number 412 machine back in his sights. And when you get that, that could mean that little burst of energy that Klimek is going to be looking for in hopes of maybe reeling in the lead of the Pro 2 class. There's your leader of the Pro 1 class out here at the Parts Unlimited OMA. Again, we are at the Bluegrass Cross Country, and Paul Whibley displaying nothing but pure confidence and domination out here today. There is Farringer holding on to a solid second-place position, salvaging what he can out of this second round of racing. We'll take a look at the ATVs when we return on Racer TV.
The Can-Am Renegade 1000 XXC with the most powerful engine in the industry. The Outlander 1000 XT with a redesigned chassis for unequal trail riding. The Commander 1000 Limited, the most equipped, luxurious side-by-side in the industry. The facts say it's the most advanced lineup out there. But the ride says it all.
Sometimes you come across something so different, you just have to stop and check it out. The Rocky Mountain ATV MC website has everything you need, from our huge selection of apparel and gear to dirt bike accessories and OEM parts. Our extensive inventory means most orders arrive in 3 days or less. Get low prices, quick shipping, and incredible customer service. RockyMountainATVMC.com. Get ready.
300 searing degrees. 750 pounds of metal twisting torque. 900 hard charging horses. You will never punish your motor oil like this. But it's good to know you could. AMSOIL. Push it to the limit.
OMA Racing on Racer TV, brought to you in part by Parts Unlimited, Moose Racing, and Springfield Armory, USA. Back on the starting line for the ATV portion of our Bluegrass Cross Country here in Greensburg, Kentucky. And problems for former champ Jody Estes and Spencer Dickerson. Round 1 winner is actually assisting the former champ and trying to get his machine back to rolling so he can get back into the racing action. But it looks like, unfortunately for Estes, he's not going to be able to even make the start today as the green flag flies on this one. A mad dash into turn number 1. The ATV's always offering up excitement in that first turn, and they do not disappoint once again as a couple of guys getting together cause a little bit of major mayhem. And speaking of major mayhem right now, Philip Wall, the number 7, desperately trying to catch his machine before the pro leaders get too far ahead. And while he's doing that, the A-class riders are leaving the line before he can even think about getting going. So that's going to be a tough break for him in order to try to catch the front runners and also try to stay ahead of those riders from row number 2. Being a minute down like that, man, that is always a tough nut to crack. No matter how fast a rider you are, those minutes are very critical in the early part of this race. Though they're easier to make up in the early part than what they are in the latter part, they're still very critical. And it looks like already we've got good battling going on as these riders are keeping each other in pretty good sight, it looks like, through the first few miles of this race out here. You can see that fresh virgin terrain for these ATV riders. So as smooth and nice as that forest floor looks right now, we know that it can only tend to get a little bit rougher and tougher on these riders as the day wears on and progresses. We see that those dry conditions out there for the ATV riders also, and lots of dust kicking out for these guys. Remember, their wheels are a little wider, and there are 2, or actually 4 of those wheels now that are kicking up a lot more dust, and it causes for those guys behind them to not be able to see nearly as much. So you've either got to ride blind or wait up just a little bit in order to let that dust settle down. It looks like some of these riders are doing the second there, and that is let that dust settle down, and the gaps are starting to open up a little bit, but we know in OMA ATV racing that these tight woods, just like on the motorcycle side of things, can always tighten things right back up and create the excitement that we always look for. Back to the action on the motorcycle side of things. Paul Whibley coming around for another lap complete. Just before he does that, though, he's going to make a quick pit stop, it looks like, as the pits are ready. His wife, Catherine, back from New Zealand here with us now, and she's all going to assist in this pit stop along with fellow Infab and Pro Yamaha team members, and that's the father of Jordan Ashburn right there. He's going to assist just a little bit and make sure that Paul gets back out there and stays in the hunt for the win of this one. Even though Jordan's back in the number 3 spot, it's a team effort out here, and they all got to help each other, and that's the way it always seems to work out for these guys. Whibley through the finish line, takes the white flag. One more lap to go for the Axeman now, and as we said, he's fresh back from New Zealand, and we had a chance to catch up with the former champ of this OMA Championship Series to find out what has exactly been going on with that rider.
Catherine, my wife's just come back from New Zealand. She had our first kid there, Colton, so they've just returned back here to the States. It's pretty cool to have those guys back here at the races. Catherine's a big help to me in the pits, and it's really good to have the whole team back together and back together at the races and doing what we love doing.
Well, Paul, the whole team plus one, as he's got the baby back with him also. Nick Farringer now checking in for the end of his lap, and he'll be taking a white flag heading into the final lap of racing. He's getting the pit board right now, just telling him to settle in, take that second place position, and take those second place points and work toward that championship here throughout the rest of the 2014 season. This is a good start. Paul Whibley also off to a good start. This will be his second win as we take a look at this single track trail through these woods. Not very tattered and torn, but obviously well-defined lines through those nice tight wood sections. And back out in the open fields, the final turns as Paul Whibley makes the push to the checkers in his second win in OMA Championship Racing here in 2014. A little bit more track, though, left for Paul Whibley as he gets another chance to ride some of that Russell Compound motocross track, a very nice facility and one that he is, I'm sure, very much in love with after the second round of racing in this Blue Cross Country OMA National that is taking place here today. A little warm conditions, dry, dusty, but all in all, a perfect day for racing, and Paul Whibley would not say any different as he makes his way through the final turn now, and as he makes that final turn, he gets on the gas and going to pay a big salute to the team there with a big wheelie down through the pro pits and into the finish line chicanes. Paul Whibley makes it 2 in a row on his road to his 6th OMA title here in the Parts Unlimited OMA Nationals. It was a rough and tough day. It was the number 2 of Nick Farringer. He was able to pull off a second place position when it was all said and done, but it wasn't without a few battle scars being shown as those tight wood sections took their tolls on the riders. You can see a little bit of bloodshed there for Nick Farringer. Mark Oresco held on for the win in the Pro 2 class. In as many rounds, he has as many wins. That's 2 in a row for the number 412, who's looking to be the man to beat out there aboard his Dirtwise back KTM machine. Man, he's going to be tough to beat there in the FTRs and everywhere else. As far as the Pro 1 class was concerned, we told you Whibley took the win. Farringer took the number 2 spot, and rounding out the top 3 there in Pro 1 class racing was the number 7 of Jordan Ashburn, making his 2014 OMA debut. As far as the podium in the Pro 2 class, Mark Oresco took the win. It was Shane Klimek in second, and Dirk Richards rounded out the top 3. Parts Unlimited OMA National Championship Racing continues June 14th and 15th at the Roller Cross Country in Newark, Missouri. We'll see you there or right back here on Racer TV.